Got it, girl. You're live.
Hi, I'm Eka Kapiotis, and I'm here on behalf of the Front Royal Women's Resource Center, and I'm very happy to have our guest, Cara Cutro, here this evening, who's going to be talking about tarot. And I wanted to just give a shout out to What Matters and Beth. Beth. Oh my gosh, Waller! I just lost it. What Matters? I'm so sorry. I always do this in the beginning. Anyway, so now that's done. Okay. Beth Waller and What Matters, and she offers us this wonderful space to do this program every month, and she has it's a 501c3 organization, doing some really cool things, so look into it. And the Front Royal Women's Resource Center is also a 501c3 who's doing some very cool things, and we'll be hearing some more about that at the end of the program. But in the meantime, I wanted to thank and introduce Cara Cutro, who is we were trying to decide earlier how to describe her, because she's a woman of many talents,
Yes.
a superstar, I think.
Thank you.
Massage therapist, herbalist,
Reiki Master.
Master
your
teacher.
Student, yes.
And of course tarot, and not to mention artist, yeah.
Yeah, tarot, teacher, reader, yes.
Welcome, Cara.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
And I know we've been talking for a while here about your experience, but I don't feel you're really talking about how the tarot was a very personal thing for you.
Yes.
And you're telling us a little bit about the history, so do you want to pick it up from there?
So I was sharing about how tarot has been such an important tool in my personal life and gotten me through so much, and has led me to the point of being able to teach and share about it. And of course, when you're teaching, you're continuing to learn, and that's such a beautiful thing. It's been such a gift to teach tarot because it's allowed me to continue learning. And there's an entire community of students that has cropped up around me, and we support each other, and we meet monthly at Mountain Mystic, and I do a class there. And we have an online community group that we share in. And it's really been a very, very fascinating experience for me. And tarot continues to be very personal, but as I've grown in teaching, of course, I've had to put myself out there more and more. So it's this interesting sort of, I don't want to say a double-edged sword, but it's like, okay, as things are growing, you got to get out there more and be more confident. And it's interesting because something like tarot, a lot of people do encounter fear around it. I've had a lot of students that, they start looking at some of the imagery, and it's just like, oh no, this is way too unpleasant. And there are all sorts of versions of tarot that make it very soft and gentle, and they're just as effective. But I find it really fascinating and important to take a look at Rider-Waite imagery, because most of what the tarot that you see today, that's what it's based on, is Rider-Waite imagery. And the history of tarot is very fascinating, and there are all sorts of different beliefs about it, and I won't get into that too much because that's a rabbit hole. But
it originated way back. It's hundreds of years old, right?
Yeah, it is, and I'm not 100% certain of the timing, but I want to say it was maybe in the 15th century or 1700s, somewhere back. Mm-hmm. And there was the Tarot of Marseille, which is really like, I'd say that's probably the real core piece of what's left and exists. But there are different decks, in Italy and in France that are in museums that are like, the original decks that they can find, at least. Some people say, oh, it originated in Egypt, this, that. There's not really any evidence to support that. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that it isn't true, but in some more, metaphysical circles, there are these, more mythological, I'll say, tales about where did tarot come from, and I'm not downing any of that or saying that it's invalid, those stories about where maybe some of the symbolism or the storyline of tarot originated. But it's not, it's more about the beauty of being human, and that we have this sort of collective unconscious, and the tarot is a part of that. It's like it has developed and changed so much over time, and it's just a reflection of where we are and what we're doing as a collective. So that's how I think of it more. It's evolving and changing and growing, and it will probably continue to do that. So it's hard to really accurately, for me, talk about the history of it, especially since I don't really know accurate facts to back it up. But there is some actual facts out there about it, and it doesn't go back as far as you'd think, which is kind of cool, because that means it's sort of a new thing, really, in terms of personal development and spiritual tools that we can use. But I use it daily, usually, and I work with other students of mine in a group. And I did bring some cards with me. I wasn't sure if we would do something interactive or not, but I decided, well, how can I do this? Because typically in workshops, we have an assignment and everyone has a deck. And clearly, not everyone's going to have a deck here, you know. So the other thing I wanted to make sure was that if anyone had questions, any questions at all about the tarot, about how to use it, about if you're already familiar with it and there's imagery that scares you, or any questions at all, I wanted to welcome those, and then if and when you are ready, we can pass the deck around. And I thought what I would do is shuffle and have you each pull one card out, and then we can kind of see what everybody got. And talk about it. Yeah, see, you're like over there going, oh. You don't want to know. All right, well, that's an interesting line of thinking right there. It's and I think that is part of what brings up a lot of fear for people, is they don't want to know. And usually that's one of two things. It's either that you already know something and you don't want to look at it, or two, there's fear around an issue, and we can totally break that down and look at the reality of it. It's usually the second thing I mentioned, that people are afraid that they're going to be shown the future and that it's going to be negative. And I don't read tarot in that way. I believe that we can find and see patterns that are at play and that could affect the future. But like, everything is happening right now in this moment, and all the power is in this moment. And when we pull a card in this moment, this card is about this moment. Yeah. Okay, so we don't ever want to give tarot this power that it's like, oh, I pulled these cards and something bad's going to happen. That's just not, I don't think it's ethical. So yeah. That's kind of, and that's been an interesting point for me as my business was growing and I was teaching more, and I started having people ask me to do readings. Teaching and doing readings are two completely different things, you know. And I can tell you, it's a lot more comfortable teaching.
Well, and aren't you talking about, I mean, I think there's sort of this concept of like fortune telling.
Yes.
And you're not fortune telling.
No,
this is not about that.
No, this is about personal development, right. about learning about ourselves, you know, in a given moment. And again, of course it can be about a choice you're getting ready to make, and it would have effects into the future, you know. Mm-hmm. So there's certainly guidance to be found in tarot, lots of guidance, but I never would use it to, you know, if someone comes, you know, and I've had to work through this, you know, you got to do things trial by fire sometimes, and it's like people come to you and they want to know about somebody else, and it's like, well, I mean, we could, but it's like, that's not really ethical, you know. Now that doesn't mean that you and I can't examine the situation, you know, and see what comes up about the situation, or look at what's happening within you that's causing you to want to know about that person.
So it really helps someone take responsibility for what's happening in their life right now and take a look at what things might be in play.
Yes.
So that they're not putting it on the past or someone else or something like that. It's really helping them own whatever it might be and getting clarity on that. Is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, more times than not, it's like it makes me laugh when I see cards, because it's like, we already know this, you know. But we all need confirmation, you know. I know I do. I need it pretty regularly. I need people and things in life to sort of just continue to confirm what I'm doing, where I'm going, what's happening, what is reality. So, but it is often you pull a couple cards or one card and you're like, oh, well, duh, you know, okay, ha, 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 you know, I already knew that, but it still is, it's confirming.
Yeah.
Good question. Mm-hmm. Why is the Rider-Waite the main basis of most of the decks?
I believe it's because it's just become so popularized. It's just the deck that took on the most popularity. You know, there may be a much better answer than that, but that's what I've got on that. It's definitely you know, when you look at, I was reading a book recently where if you look at Tarot of Marseille, which was first, it's the major arcana are what is the main focus, the minors or the suits, because when if you take a deck of playing cards, for instance, that would be like a tarot deck missing all the majors. So you have 4 suits, you know, and with the majors involved, it's different. So the Marseille deck is very much focused on that, and the rest of it is very it's much more veiled. It has a lot more secrecy around the imagery in the minor arcana, whereas Rider-Waite is very accessible. There's tons of imagery to work with. So it's not like you pulled a card and there's 6 sticks. You're like, what the heck does this mean? You know, and that's Tarot of Marseille, you know. It's a lot more work, you know, to get to know. And you could study numerology and study, you know, and then you could access it that way. You know, that would be your door opening your intuitive self to the minors in the Tarot of Marseille. But when you're talking about Rider-Waite, it's like way more. It's so rich with symbolism, you know. And I get kind of spoiled because every once in a while I will find a simpler deck, and it's like, man, I don't even begin. I don't know what this means, you know. I don't see anything here. And you know, it's an avenue of study that I've wanted to explore. It's like, let's look at a deck where it's just 6 sticks and 5 sticks and 4 sticks, and you're like, I don't know what it means, you know. It's like, but with Rider-Waite, it's a lot more rich, and there's tons more symbolism, and there are scenes of action happening, and you can go, wow, well, what do I think is happening in this picture?
Can you show us one?
Sure. And I brought my teaching deck, my big deck.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be an example of a minor card, and this is the 4 of Swords. So, like I was saying, in the Tarot of Marseille, it would basically just be, you know, these 4 swords in the air, and we'd be like, well, what the heck does that mean? But in this instance, there's actually a picture, and there's something happening in this picture, and there's a lot to be seen here, and a lot to be thought about. And, you know, you might see it and think one thing, and then you may see it and think something else. And no answer is wrong. And that's why I really try to encourage people to take the time to explore the imagery for themselves. Yes, you know, look at it, meditate on it, write it down, then, you know, corroborate with others, read a book, you know, but experience it, you know. So in this particular image, there's a man, and he's laying on what would be his sarcophagus or his coffin, and he's not dead. But the fact that he would be laying on top of the sarcophagus, it tells you that he did just go through something that was really challenging. He's at a time, he's healing, and this, you know, these swords on the wall, it's kind of like they're in suspended animation. It's like everything's at a pause. So this is a card about rest, taking a time out, you know. The card that comes before it, and it's very important when we're learning tarot, the sequence of the cards, they all go together. They all weave a story together as one. They are individual, but they also work together as one. So when you line them up in order in the suit of swords, you see that there's this sort of storyline happening. So right before this is a heart with 3 swords in it, and it's like, it's been a very challenging card for me. I've had that card a lot, the 3 of Swords. It's about betrayal, it's about brokenheartedness, it's about, you know, unhealthy patterns that lead us to do things over and over again that hurt ourselves. It is often a card of like heartbreak and disappointment, and, you know, when you see it, you're like, are we back there again, right? Mm-hmm. But, you know, over time, working with that card, I don't cringe when I see it. I know what it's about. I know what it means for me, you know, and I don't think it's predicting something bad that's going to happen. It's talking to me about my own behaviors and patterns and things that I do that set myself up for repeated wounding kind of thing, right? So in this card, we're resting after that. So it doesn't always, if it came up for you, refer to the card before it, but it's interesting to note that that's what comes before it. But if I pulled this card this morning, I'd say, okay, you know, this is a day of rest. You know, if I have to go to work, that's fine, but I'm going to chill today. I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to take it easy. I'm not going to get all gung-ho or try to like accomplish something phenomenal. This isn't a day to like begin a new project, okay? Unless it's already planned. You know, it's just, it signifies a time of resting and healing. So that's just one example where it's rich with symbolism that, you know, if it was a different deck that was a little more simplistic, we would all be more inclined to be stumped if we weren't aware of numerological symbolism. Any other questions? All right, I'd like to pass around the deck. So I'm just gonna like meditate with the deck for a second. And this bad boy is so big, it's not the easiest to shuffle, but I have figured it out.
How many cards are there in the deck?
There's 78 cards. Yeah, any card.
Now, is it good to think of a question when you're doing that, or a particular thing?
I mean, if you know, if there's something that's at the forefront, you know, that clearly that's most likely what's going to come up. When I teach, I don't start off working with questions as much as I start off with people trying to get to know the symbolism. So it's sort of like, okay, today what we're doing is we're just exploring the symbolism. So we want to get to know it. Mm-hmm. So in order to do that, we're, you know, sure, you know, if you're like, oh, I really have this thing, this issue, then of course, but you don't have to, especially in the learning phases, ask questions necessarily. You can just pull a card and just see what comes up, and either you're going to know what is this about, you're going to know what the message is, or you're not. And if you don't, that's okay. You're gonna explore it. You're gonna let the day unfold and see if the day somehow reflects to you what you pulled. You're gonna write down what you see and think, and kind of let it unfold for you. You know.
So, Jen, are you gonna take one?
You too, Eka.
It's just such an amazing way to sort of just explore the self. You know.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
So I'm like, what did I get? Oh my gosh. Oh gosh. Okay. Well, of course I got one of like the most challenging images in the deck, which I find really interesting. So I got the 10. I got the 10 of Swords. Yeah. Right. Of course I did. And it's funny because there was a time in my life where this card would have really like upset me. Okay. Where I would have been concerned or scared, but. Like I was describing with you, my 3 of Swords journey, how like I kept getting it and getting it and getting it and getting it, and I finally was like, okay, you know, I want to open myself up to the message and the healing that this card is trying to offer me, because I really believe that tarot is a tool for healing. So if I approach this in that light, this isn't negative, you know. It looks negative, but it isn't. This is a card about like something being completely done and over. It's a card about new beginnings. Right? It's like whatever it is that you're doing, it's done. This is like if you think there's something, oh, should I let go of it? Is it over yet? This says it's done. Okay, it's done, and it also says now there's only it's all up from here. You know, there's no lower point than this. Okay, so it's actually kind of like, hey, guess what? The worst is over, and this is a new beginning. Okay. Now, I have had similar work with this card where it would come up and come up and come up, right? And it started to become humorous to the point where 9 out of 10 times when I pull this card, I actually laugh out loud because the swords can be sort of dramatic, okay? The swords have a tendency to be, they're over the top, you know? It's kind of like this, like it's humorous to me. It's like, okay. And they're all like that because they talk about mental anguish, things that originate in the mind that cause us pain. So it's all about the way that we're thinking, has to do with communication, thoughts, the mind. You know, the sky is starting to clear, so it's going to be okay, even though it really doesn't look like it. But I swear, it's a good card. And you know, one of the other things that I find interesting about it is, you know, like I said, you build your own relationship with these things. You know, I get a lot of acupuncture, okay? I had acupuncture today, all right? Now, I know it sounds silly, but like sometimes this will kind of in my mind be about that. It might be about, you know, it's along the spine. So sometimes I'll think it has to do with chakra activation or kundalini energy. You know, there's a lot to be read here, depending on who you are. But it's not a scary card for me today. It's oh wow, finally it's over and something new is coming. That's when I see it, I'm like, oh well, good. Whatever it is that needs to be let go of is dead and gone, you know. And now we're moving on to something better. So, you know, I'm glad that I got the Ten of Swords. I think that's kind of funny. What did you get? Oh, that's so beautiful. That's perfect for you.
It's really beautiful.
Let's see.
It's an Ace of Cups.
Oh.
So there's a dove
Mm-hmm.
bringing a cross into this overflowing lotus water and lotuses and a big hand
Yes.
containing it.
Mm-hmm. And
I like
anytime
the feeling.
I see a hand coming out of a cloud, I always think of that is it's something. It's like a divine gift, you know. So anytime you see in tarot, you see that hand kind of popping out of a cloud. it's like you know, God's involved, you know, the spirit's involved. And with aces, it's new opportunities, it's seeds for growth, you know. And what are your impressions when you?
Well, it just seems like overflowing bounty and beauty and grace and peace and loveliness and, you know, fullness to me. That's what it feels like. And I just shared with you that I'm kind of embarking on this new thing that I feel is guided, and it feels like there's a lot of really great energy behind it, and so this just makes me feel really good.
No, it's very confirming for you.
It is.
No,
it is.
It's
Yeah.
very confirming.
It is, and I love the water with the cross and the dove, and I mean, it just couldn't be better.
You just need a dolphin.
I know. That's what
Yeah,
I was like. Is there a dolphin in there?
That's all you need.
I'm sure there's a whole deck of dolphins out there somewhere that we can get you, and that would be great. Does anybody else have a card that they're like having an aha moment with, or what do you have?
I hope this is, I felt like a new beginning,
I mean,
or maybe not.
well, I really encourage you to go along with what it is that you feel for that card. I'm not going to, you know, if you felt that it was about new beginnings, then that's something that needs to stay within the context of your definitions about that card. I don't want to like stray you away from your own intuitive guidance about it.
But I am curious what you'd see. To me, it looked like buds that were coming out of, like at springtime, fresh.
Well, and see, the thing that's really cool about you saying that is that with wands, that is one of the main symbols that we would focus on in wands, in the symbolism with wands, is that there are buds of new growth on the wands. So that is significant. And, you know, wands are about passion, they're about ignition. It's often sort of spirit-guided energy that is creating new things. So it's very entrepreneurial and sort of businessy, although it doesn't have to do with that. But when you look at them all together, you can see that someone's having this new idea and it's becoming something, and you get to watch them go through the growth process of this thing that they're creating. Now that particular card there's a lot of movement. So it speaks about movement. It's talking about energy moving. When I see it, I always know that there's a lot of energy moving really quickly. So there's something swiftly changing or moving, and I would say in a positive way. So it's certainly going to have to do with new beginnings. It's kind of a wild card of all the cards. It's sort of a little bit of a wild card, and is often best interpreted with another card because of the nature of it. But, you know, I've heard people say too, and this is a much more mundane explanation of that card, but it can be communications, a lot of communicating going on, where there's like texting going back and forth or emails going back and forth, where there's a lot of active communication going on, like where it's boop, 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 quickly. Some people say it's, arrows of love. If it's like in a reading where there's more things, other cards that would be indicating romance, that could be seen as like arrows, you know. But it certainly is energy, a lot of energy directed and moving in a direction, you know. So if you're, again, when we look at cards that are going to tell us, do I do this thing or not? That would be a yes. That would be, we're moving forward. You know, that would definitely not be like that first card I pulled that was the Four of Swords, or it's like, that was a card about resting. So if you were like, oh, should I go do this? And you pulled a card and you got that, I would say, yeah, go. You know, that's like, let's do it. Woohoo, you know. Whereas the Four of Swords is like, okay, no, we're going to take a time out, you know.
This is really good because I took a position that I wasn't sure if I should. Mm-hmm. And this makes me feel like I guess I did the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd say there's a lot changing quickly with it. And that, you know, you, again, we're not predicting, but you can sort of expect things to move forward quickly with that. You know, you would use that as like being prepared for that. You know, say, okay, things are probably going to move quickly. I know that by this card. You know, being prepared for things to move along quickly. That's how I would look at it. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of moving along
yeah,
quickly.
right. It's time to go.
We're going to have to end this part of talking with you and turn it over to Barbara and Lee so that we can hear about what's coming up in the future of the FRWRC. So, but was there anything that you wanted to say, you know, just in closing for the live, and then we'll continue to talk afterwards. And for people that would like to come join us anytime, we're here on Main Street at What Matters, and we meet on the third Thursday from 5:30 to 7, and we love to have you in person, and we're really grateful to you for coming. Is there anything you wanted to say to wrap up?
I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for coming, and I'd be happy to answer more questions afterwards. And I think
how do people find you?
How do people find me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm very active on Facebook, so if I'll hand out business cards, but it's Cara Cutro, and I'm really open with my Facebook. I use it for business, so if you find me and it's a personal account, you can contact me and talk to me through that on Messenger. But I'm in Sperryville. I have a business, Abracadabra Massage Wellness. It's there. It's 32 Main Street, so I'm there as well. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yay. Great. Yes.
Microphone.
Microphone. Barbie, you want to come? Why don't you come sit here?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, I'll sit here.
That will be the plan from now on.
All right, that makes it easy.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I am Barbara Way. I'm the Executive Director of Front Royal Women's Resource Center. And the big thing we have going on this month is our annual appeal. If you're not a member, I encourage you to be a member. All of what we do goes to support our programs, which is our Dare to Dream grants. We give grants to women to have them move forward in their lives. So in November, we will start the Dare to Dream process, and any woman who is 18 years and above in Warren County can apply, and we do our best to help them fulfill their dreams. That's what we do, and we love it. We also have a girl grant program. We give grants to middle school age girls because we feel that's the age where things get challenging, where they lose their way. So that's another big thing we do. We have, and you know, then of course we do things like this, which is just connecting women with each other to help us and support us and move us forward in the world, which is what this is all about. So that's the big thing. This is, I promised Tina I'd show this. This is our annual appeal. We have chosen this year to do September as our annual appeal month because it's actually International Women's Friendship Month. And so if you donate during this month, there's a couple things that happen. You can donate in honor of a woman who is your friend or someone you love, and we will send them a card and tell them that. We also have a $10,000 matching grant. So in the month of September, if you donate, you will double your money. And we also have really cool gifts. So, you know, we put your name in a drawing. This month we have this wonderful, beautiful art book called Women Who Read Are Dangerous. And it's all about women reading through the ages. It's been a huge thing. If you look at this book, you realize all the artists who have portrayed women reading throughout the centuries. It's pretty cool. So, and we have, you know, a coffee mug, because it's a coffee table book. So we put a coffee mug and a Daily Grind gift certificate. So that's, you know, I'm going on and on. But anyway, that's a snapshot. The next big thing is we have our yard sale. I'm going to have Lee talk about that. The month of October, we have two amazing guests first for this event. We have Susie McNally, who is one of the originators of the shoe comic strip. And it's 40 years of shoes. So she's going to come and talk, and she's totally fun. And we also have, I blanked. When? Suzanne Mitchell of CASA. Right. Suzanne Mitchell of CASA, which is the court-appointed, they basically go into the courts and support and for children. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that well.
Advocate for children.
Yeah, thank you. That is the word I was looking for. They're advocates for children in the courts. It's an amazing thing. Actually, next week, September, we have Carolyn Wood she's the Dean of Fauquier Campus, and she's doing an amazing program. So check us out, frwrc.org. We have our community yard sale coming up. Lee, do you want to say anything about that, or you want me to just roll with it? Okay. So Festival of Leaves, Wycott Realty, Route 55, everybody donates tons of cool stuff, and we basically sell it. Basically, you name your price, and it all goes to the Women's Resource Center. I think I've covered everything. Anything else, guys, I've forgotten? Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Cara. This was totally fascinating. Loved it. And thank you, Eka.
Thank you. And I also want to give a shout out to Jen Avery, our videographer.
Yes, thank you.
And,
Thank you.
who's also now next door realtor. Right? So give yourself a little plug there. Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us, and we're going to continue afterwards. So thank you again, Cara.
Thank you.
All righty. Bye now. Till next month.